All right, welcome back, everybody, for another deep dive with us. We get a lot of requests, and one of the ones we hear over and over again is to tackle Jordan Peterson.
Yeah, his 12 rules for life. It's a big one.
Yeah, it is dense.
There's a lot there. Psychology, philosophy, personal anecdotes. So where do we even begin with this one?
Well, I think, we picked out some passages that we thought were particularly relevant to, our modern lives and sort of the things that we all struggle with.
Yeah, you did pick some interesting ones. We got lobsters.
Lobster.
Yeah, the shadow self. Even a rule about petting cats.
It's going to be a wild ride.
It is.
So let's just dive right in. Right off the bat, Peterson talks about this idea of moral relativism.
Right.
Which I think a lot of us can relate to, in our modern world. It feels like everything's up for debate. There's no clear right or wrong.
Yeah.
But then he says that leads to nihilism, a feeling of meaninglessness.
Mm-hmm.
It seems kind of paradoxical, doesn't it?
It really does, yeah. On the one hand, we crave this freedom from rules and, being told what to do and what to think. But then on the other hand, we end up feeling kind of lost in a drift. Like, what's the point of it all if there's no meaning?
Right, exactly.
Yeah, so Peterson's point is that humans, we seem to need some kind of structure.
Yeah.
Some kind of purpose that goes beyond just chasing pleasure or comfort. We need something to strive for, something bigger than ourselves, maybe.
So how do we balance that?
Right.
Freedom and meaning.
It's the age-old question, isn't it?
It feels almost impossible sometimes.
It does. It feels like we're constantly being pulled in these two different directions.
Mm-hmm.
But Peterson, he suggests that's where hierarchy comes in. And this is where things get really interesting because he uses lobsters to explain it.
Lobsters?
Lobsters.
Okay.
Yeah. So they have this complex dominance hierarchy.
Mm-hmm.
There's like these 3 levels.
Oh, wow.
And it determines who gets the best resources, who gets to mate. And here's the kicker. The neurochemistry of it. It's similar to humans. Serotonin.
Seriously?
Big role. Both species.
Wow.
He even points out that Prozac affects lobsters, similarly to how it affects us.
Wait, so you're telling me like lobsters on Prozac are just like vibing at the top of the tank?
Well, not quite, but
Okay.
But the point is that this whole hierarchy thing, it's deeply ingrained,
Mm-hmm.
Evolutionarily speaking.
Yeah.
And it's not about blindly accepting inequality or anything like that. It's about understanding that competence and responsibility, those matter in social structures.
Okay, I see, yeah. So it's like even in a lobster tank, it's not just about being the biggest or the strongest.
Right.
There's something more complex at play.
Yeah, there's a whole social dynamic going on, just like in human societies.
Okay, but that makes me think, like, if we're wired for this hierarchy stuff, doesn't that make it even harder to improve ourselves? It feels like we're constantly comparing ourselves to others.
Yeah.
Especially in the age of social media, and it's so discouraging.
Oh, absolutely. And you're right. Social comparison is a total trap.
It is.
Yeah, Peterson, he actually has a rule specifically for this. And it's compare yourself to who you were yesterday, not to who someone else is today.
I love that.
Yeah.
Focus on your progress, not some airbrushed highlight reel.
Exactly.
But how do we actually do that?
Right.
Because it's easy to say that. Then you open up Instagram and you're like,
Yeah, you get sucked right back in.
yeah.
Well, Peterson argues that it's about shifting from competition to personal development. It's not about beating others. It's about being a better you, step by step.
Yeah, that's a really interesting shift in perspective. I like that. So much of our world is built around comparison. But this feels, I don't know, more freeing somehow.
Yeah, more in your control.
Yeah,
Yeah, it allows you to define success on your own terms, not society's.
exactly. So if we're working on ourselves, not trying to one up everyone else, how does that affect, like, who we choose to be friends with?
Well, Peterson has a rule for that too, but it's a bit controversial. Be friends with people who want the best for you. Seems pretty straightforward, right?
Yeah.
But then he tells this story about his friend Chris, who struggled with addiction. And it really shows how complicated it can be.
Right, because sometimes supporting someone means letting them face the consequences of their actions,
Right.
even if it hurts. And that's tough.
Yeah, it is.
It feels almost counter to, like, what we're taught about being a good friend.
It is. It's a real dilemma.
Mm-hmm.
And Peterson's not saying to, like, abandon people in need or anything like that.
Right.
But to be really honest with yourself about what you can handle.
Yeah.
To balance that compassion with protecting your own well-being.
Yeah, that makes sense. Can't pour from an empty cup, right?
Exactly.
But then how do we know when to step back versus step in?
Ooh, that's a tough one. It's a real tightrope walk.
It feels like it, yeah.
It is. And Peterson, he doesn't give us like easy answers. He's
Yeah.
really challenging us to think critically about our own capacity and where our responsibility lies. But this ties in beautifully with his next rule. It's all about confronting chaos.
Chaos. You mean like my overflowing inbox?
Well, maybe.
Okay, maybe.
But Peterson's talking about something much bigger. He says that truth is a force for ordering the world.
Okay.
But he's not talking about just facts or information.
Okay, I see. So not like, 2 + 2 = 4.
Right, exactly. He's using that story of Adam and Eve as
Yeah.
like an example. That idea that confronting the unknown, what's uncomfortable, that's what leads to a deeper understanding.
So it's more like wrestling with life's messiness to make sense of it,
Exactly.
not just hiding from the hard stuff.
Exactly. And he really stresses honesty here.
Yeah.
Not just honesty with others, but with yourself. And he has this funny story about a guy trying to sell him a toaster, actually.
Okay, I'm intrigued. What does a toaster have to do with truth and chaos?
Okay, so picture this. It's late at night. Peterson's walking down the street.
Okay.
And this guy comes up to him, clearly drunk, trying to sell him a toaster.
Okay.
And Peterson realized, like, this guy doesn't need a toaster. He needs, help.
Right.
And he needed money for alcohol, probably. And buying that toaster wasn't actually going to help him.
Yeah, enabling.
Exactly. So he was honest with the guy,
Right.
explained why he wouldn't buy it.
Okay.
But he also showed concern for him as a person.
Wow.
So it was about, like, aligning his actions with his values, even in this, like, tiny interaction.
Wow, that's a great example. I like that. So it's like even these small choices matter. Like if we're constantly cutting corners,
Right.
telling little white lies, it creates this kind of internal chaos.
Exactly, yeah. And it impacts how we see ourselves.
Right.
And how we interact with the world. So Peterson's really challenging us here. Can we be more truthful, even when it's hard, to create a more ordered life?
So we've got moral relativism leading to a need for structure. Lobster's teaching us about hierarchy, self-improvement over competition, choosing friends wisely, confronting chaos through truth.
Mm-hmm.
It's a lot to digest.
It is a lot.
Where do we go from here?
Well, Peterson, he argues that all this is tied to finding meaning in life, something beyond just seeking pleasure. He actually says that a life solely focused on pleasure is a recipe for a meaningless existence.
Wait, so a little suffering is good for us.
Right.
I mean, I get that challenges can make us stronger, but is he saying we should actively seek out hardship?
Not exactly.
Okay.
He's not advocating for masochism or anything like that, but he does believe that true meaning, that comes from grappling with life's difficulties, striving for something more than fleeting happiness.
I guess that makes sense, because if everything's easy and pleasurable, what's the point?
Right.
There's no growth, no sense of accomplishment.
Yeah, and to illustrate this, he uses this beautiful symbol from Eastern traditions, the lotus flower.
Ooh, I love that imagery.
Yeah.
So how does that work? What's the connection there?
So the lotus flower, it grows from the mud, right?
Right, yeah.
So Peterson's saying, just like that lotus emerges from the darkness into this beautiful flower, meaning it often comes from our struggles,
Okay.
from transforming those challenges into something beautiful, something meaningful.
Wow, I never thought of it that way. It's like those, inspirational quotes about finding the light in the darkness.
Exactly.
But in Peterson's case, it's not just about enduring the darkness, it's about using it to create something beautiful.
Yes, exactly. And that creative process, that striving, that's where he believes we find that true fulfillment. But there's a catch, of course.
There's always a catch.
There is.
What's the catch?
Yeah, Peterson points out that we often miss crucial details in this quest for meaning because our perception, it's limited.
Okay.
And he uses that famous gorilla in the room experiment. Remember that one?
Oh, yeah. The one where you're so focused on counting the basketball passes that you miss a gorilla walking right through the middle of the whole scene.
Yes.
Yeah.
It's mind-blowing how much we can just completely miss when we're fixated on one thing.
Totally.
So Peterson's asking us, what gorillas are we missing in life? What opportunities, what connections, even dangers are we just blind to because our focus is so narrow?
That's a little chilling.
Yeah, a little bit.
Makes you wonder how much our own perception is holding us back.
Yeah, and that's what we're going to explore in part 2 of this deep dive,
All right, can't wait.
along with some even deeper questions about the darker side of human nature and how our stories shape our understanding of the world.
All right. Hooked. I can't wait to dive back in and see where this goes.
Me too. So We were just talking about those gorillas, the things we miss, because our focus is so narrow, it's easy to get caught up in our own little worlds, isn't it?
Oh, yeah, totally. It's like we're walking around with blinders on sometimes.
Yeah.
Yeah. But how do we take those blinders off? How do we actually see that bigger picture when we're like bombarded with information and distractions all the time?
Well, Peterson, he argues that one way to do this is by cultivating what he calls beginner's mind. It's a concept that he borrows from Zen Buddhism.
Beginner's mind. Okay, I'm intrigued. What does that even mean?
So think of like a child, seeing something for the very first time, that sense of wonder and openness to experience just without judgment.
Yeah.
It's about letting go of all of our preconceived notions and just approaching life with fresh eyes,
Yeah.
being present in the moment.
I love that. It's like hitting the reset button on our perception. But how do we actually do that? It feels like our brains are just hardwired to categorize and judge everything we encounter.
It is. It's a practice, not a switch that we can just flip on and off.
Right.
Peterson suggests things like mindfulness meditation, spending time in nature, even, engaging in creative activities. It's about training ourselves to be more present, more attentive to those details that we usually just overlook.
I've noticed that when I'm out hiking, for example, I'm way more likely to notice the tiny wildflowers or the patterns in the bark of a tree. It's like my senses are heightened somehow.
Exactly, yeah. Being in nature is like a fantastic way to cultivate that beginner's mind. It's a reminder that there's just so much beauty and complexity in the world if we just slow down and pay attention.
Yeah. Okay, so beginner's mind is one way to kind of widen our lens. But Peterson also takes us to some pretty dark places in his book, right? He talks about the capacity for evil that exists within all of us. And that's honestly, it's a bit unsettling.
It is, yeah. It can be really uncomfortable to face that part of ourselves.
Mm.
But Peterson, he argues that acknowledging this shadow side of ourselves, it's crucial if we're going to actually confront evil in the world.
Okay.
And he uses this really harrowing example from Auschwitz, a guard forcing a prisoner to carry this heavy bag of salt back and forth just for the sake of inflicting suffering.
Ugh, that's just awful. It's hard to believe that humans are capable of such cruelty. But is Peterson saying that we're all capable of becoming monsters? Like, that seems a bit extreme, doesn't it?
Yeah, I don't think he's saying that we're all destined to become perpetrators of evil or anything like that, but he's arguing that recognizing that potential for darkness within ourselves, that's essential for developing humility and compassion.
Okay.
It allows us to understand those complexities of human motivation and to approach others with more empathy.
I see. So it's like that saying, hurt people hurt people.
Yeah.
If we can understand the pain and the brokenness that drives people to do these terrible things, maybe we can start to kind of heal those wounds and
Mhm.
prevent further harm.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Peterson believes that by acknowledging our own shadow side, we can become more conscious and responsible for our actions.
Yeah.
We can choose to act from a place of compassion rather than fear or anger.
So it's not about denying the darkness, it's about facing it head on and using that awareness to guide our choices.
Yes, precisely. It's about integrating the shadow self into our understanding of who we are so that we can make more conscious and ethical choices.
Okay, that makes sense. So we've talked about beginner's mind and confronting our shadow selves. Peterson also talks a lot about the power of stories, right? How they shape our understanding of the world and our place in it.
He does, yeah. He believes that stories are more than just entertainment. They're these like repositories of wisdom. They offer these insights into the human condition that transcend time and culture.
It's like that saying, every story has already been told. It's just the characters and the setting that change. But the underlying themes of love, loss, betrayal, redemption, those are universal.
Exactly, yeah. And Peterson argues that by engaging with stories, by reading them, listening to them, even telling our own, we can gain a deeper understanding of ourselves and the world around us. We can learn from the mistakes of others, we can find inspiration in their triumphs, and we can connect with something larger than ourselves.
It's like we're participating in this collective conversation,
Yeah.
across time and cultures,
Right.
sharing these universal experiences and learning from each other's wisdom.
Exactly. And Peterson, he encourages us to reflect on the stories that resonate with us, to explore their deeper meanings, and to consider how they might inform our own lives.
So it's not just about passively consuming stories, but about actively engaging with them, asking ourselves, what does this story teach me? How does it connect to my own experiences? What wisdom can I glean from it?
Exactly, yeah. And Peterson, he also highlights the role of storytelling in the development of personal responsibility. He suggests that by crafting our own narratives, By taking ownership of our stories, we can transform them from mere chronicles of events into powerful tools for self-discovery and growth.
So we're not just characters in our own stories, we're also the authors.
Right.
We have the power to shape the narrative, to choose how we interpret our experiences and what meaning we make of them.
That's exactly what Peterson's suggesting. He believes that by becoming conscious authors of our own life stories, we can create narratives that are both truthful and redemptive. We can choose to focus on the lessons learned, the resilience gained, those moments of grace and beauty, even in the midst of hardship.
That's a powerful concept. It's like taking back control of our lives, choosing how we frame our experiences and what lessons we take away from them.
Exactly. It's about reclaiming our agency and choosing to create a narrative that empowers us, that helps us to make sense of the chaos and to move forward with purpose and meaning.
Okay, so we've explored the importance of beginner's mind, confronting our shadow selves, and the power of stories in shaping our understanding of the world. But Peterson doesn't just offer philosophical insights. He also delves into some very practical matters like raising children, right?
He does, yeah. And he has some strong opinions on parenting, particularly about the potential harm caused by removing all limits and boundaries. He argues that while protecting our children is essential, overprotection can actually hinder their development.
Okay, so that's a tricky balance, right? We want to keep our kids safe, but we also don't want to shield them from the realities of life. So, what does Peterson suggest?
He emphasizes the importance of teaching children how to navigate the complexities of a challenging world. He believes that clear rules and discipline are crucial for fostering a sense of security and personal responsibility in children.
I can see how that makes sense. Like, if kids don't have any boundaries, they don't learn how to self regulate or how to deal with frustration and disappointment.
Exactly, yeah. Peterson argues that limits and boundaries, while they're sometimes perceived as restrictive, can actually be liberating by providing structure and clarity. They help children to understand the consequences of their actions and to develop a sense of self-control.
So, it's about finding that sweet spot between being supportive and being overly permissive. It's about giving kids the freedom to explore and learn, but also providing them with clear expectations and consequences.
Precisely, yeah. And Peterson believes that this approach to parenting helps children to develop the resilience, the self-reliance, and the responsibility that they need to thrive in the world.
It's about preparing them for the inevitable challenges they'll face, not pretending that those challenges don't exist.
Exactly. It's about equipping them with the tools and the skills that they need to navigate those challenges successfully.
Okay, so we've covered beginner's mind, confronting our shadow selves, the power of stories, and the importance of setting limits for children. Peterson also tackles some pretty controversial topics in his book, right? Like the gender gap and its implications for society.
He does, yeah. He has some strong opinions on that topic as well, arguing that men are struggling to adapt to modern social expectations, leading to a decline in their educational attainment and mental health.
Wow, that's a bold statement. What evidence does he present to support this claim?
He points to the fact that women now outnumber men in universities and are increasingly entering traditionally male-dominated fields. He also highlights the rising rates of depression and suicide among men, suggesting that these trends are connected to a sense of disenfranchisement and a lack of purpose.
So he's suggesting that there's a disconnect between traditional masculine roles and the evolving expectations of modern society.
Exactly. He believes that this gap is contributing to a sense of confusion and frustration among men, leading to negative consequences for both genders.
Yeah, it's a complex issue for sure, and it's one that sparked a lot of, heated debate. But I think it's important to have these conversations to acknowledge the challenges faced by both men and women and to look for solutions that benefit everyone.
I agree. It's about finding ways to create a society that supports the healthy development and well-being of all genders, while also acknowledging the unique challenges faced by each.
Okay, so we've covered a lot of ground here. Beginner's mind, confronting our shadow selves, the power of stories, setting limits for children, and the complexities of the gender gap. Peterson covers a lot of territory in his 12 Rules for Life, doesn't he? It's like he's offering a blueprint for navigating the complexities of the 21st century.
He really does. And his final rule is perhaps his most unexpected and endearing. Pet a cat when you encounter one on the street.
Wait, what? Pet a cat? Is this some kind of Zen koan or something? What's the deeper meaning behind this, seemingly random rule?
It might seem lighthearted, but Peterson suggests that there's a profound message here. recognizing the importance of small acts of kindness and connection.
So it's not just about petting cats, but about cultivating a certain way of being in the world, a way of being that's open to unexpected moments of joy and connection.
Precisely, yeah. He relates this to the Buddhist concept of beginner's mind, which we talked about earlier, that sense of openness and curiosity, that willingness to be present in the moment, and to appreciate the simple things in life.
Oh, I like that. It's a reminder that meaning and happiness aren't always found in everyday moments of connection and beauty that we often overlook.
Exactly. And petting a cat, with its softness and purring, it can be a powerful reminder of that simple truth. It's a moment of connection, of shared affection, that can bring a sense of peace and well-being to both the giver and the receiver.
It's like a microcosm of the kind of world Peterson's encouraging us to create,
Yeah.
a world where we're more present, more compassionate, more attuned to the needs of others, both human and animal.
Yes, exactly. It's about recognizing the interconnectedness of all beings and choosing to act in ways that foster kindness, empathy, and mutual respect. So we were talking about recognizing that interconnectedness of all beings and, choosing to act in ways that foster kindness and empathy and mutual respect. But Peterson also gets really personal in this final chapter. He shares his story about his daughter's struggle with a chronic illness, and it's both heartbreaking and really inspiring.
Yeah, it is. He talks about her journey with juvenile rheumatoid arthritis.
Right.
It's a painful and debilitating condition. She's battled it since childhood. And it really reveals, I think, Peterson's vulnerability as a father, but also his really profound insights into the nature of suffering and resilience.
Yeah, absolutely. You can feel the depth of his love for his daughter and his, just his deep empathy for what she's going through.
Yeah, totally. It must have been incredibly difficult for both of them to navigate such a challenging experience. What lessons did Peterson draw from this?
Well, he emphasizes the importance of humility and acceptance,
Mm,
especially when you're dealing with suffering. You
mm.
know, he acknowledges that life, it's often unpredictable,
Yeah.
and we don't always have control over the challenges that come our way.
So it's about learning to navigate those hardships, the inevitable hardships of life, with grace and resilience.
Yes, absolutely. But he also highlights the importance of seeking support and connection.
Mm,
When facing those difficult times, he describes how his whole family rallied around his daughter,
yeah.
offering practical help, emotional support, unwavering love.
It's a powerful reminder that we don't have to go through tough times alone,
Right.
that the love and support of others, that can make all of the difference.
Yeah, absolutely. Peterson's story, it really underscores the importance of community, of compassion, of that shared responsibility when you're navigating life's challenges.
It's like that old African proverb, it takes a village to raise a child. But it's not just about children, is it? It takes a village to support us through all stages of life, through the ups and the downs, the inevitable ups and downs that we all face.
Yeah, you're right. We all need each other. And Peterson's story is a powerful reminder of the strength and resilience that you find in that human connection.
Yeah, I love that. Okay, so we've talked about beginner's mind, confronting our shadow selves, the power of stories, setting limits for children, complexities of the gender gap, the simple act of petting a cat, the importance of community when you're facing suffering. What other insights does Peterson offer in this last chapter?
Well, he delves into this concept of truth and its role in ordering our lives.
Hmm.
And he uses this seemingly mundane anecdote
Okay.
about a man trying to sell him a toaster.
A toaster. How does that relate to truth? I'm really curious.
So Peterson was approached by this man who appeared to be intoxicated,
Okay.
and he was trying to sell this toaster.
Mm-hmm.
And Peterson, he recognized that the man, he probably needed money for alcohol,
Hmm.
and that buying the toaster would just enable that addiction.
Yeah, that's such a tough situation. It would be so easy to just buy the toaster and be done with it, but Peterson chose to kind of engage with the situation more thoughtfully. What did he do?
He declined to buy the toaster,
You're okay.
but he did so in a way that was both truthful and compassionate.
Hmm. Okay.
He explained his reasoning to the man
Yeah.
and expressed concern for his well-being.
So it was about being honest without being judgmental
Right.
or dismissive, about recognizing the man's humanity
Yeah.
and treating him with respect, even though he was struggling.
Exactly. Peterson argues that truth, even when it's difficult, it's essential for maintaining order and integrity in our lives.
It's about aligning our actions with our values, even in those small, seemingly insignificant interactions. It's about choosing to be honest even when it would be easier to look away or pretend we don't see the problem.
Exactly. And Peterson, he believes that this commitment to truthfulness, even in these, seemingly small matters, it could have a ripple effect,
Yeah.
creating a more just and compassionate world.
It's like if we're willing to be truthful in those everyday interactions, maybe that translates to being more truthful in our relationships, our work, our communities, and ultimately even the larger systems that shape our world.
Exactly. He believes that personal integrity, that's the foundation for social change.
Well, on that note, I think it's time to wrap up this deep dive. We've covered so much ground, from beginner's mind to confronting our shadow selves, the power of stories, setting limits, navigating the gender gap, even petting cats. What a journey.
It really has been. Peterson's 12 Rules for Life, it's a challenging book, but it's full of these profound insights.
Yeah, it really gets you thinking about how to live a more meaningful life.
Absolutely.
So, to all of you listening, thank you so much for joining us on this deep dive. We hope you found it as thought provoking and as inspiring as we did. Remember, as Peterson says, the world is full of suffering, but it's also full of the overcoming of suffering. It's up to each of us to choose which path we will walk.
And until next time, keep diving deep.